All right, the health care vote in a moment. Right now, we've got the House Freedom Caucus member, Jim Jordan of Ohio. Congressman, great having you on. Any surprises you expect or are worried about?
No, I mean, I think it'll be. I think it's just what you said earlier, Neil. I think it'll be close, but I think we'll win the vote. We have a pretty good bill that we can then send to the Senate and hopefully make even better and fully accomplish what we told the voters we were going to do, which is a full repeal, because this doesn't quite get us there, but it's a good first step.
All right, so you were not keen on the first go-round, the way it was going. You are now. What closed the deal for you?
Well, I mean, think about it. Because conservatives engaged in such an intense way in this debate over the last 8-10 weeks, we got all the Obamacare taxes are going right away. That was not the case when the draft was first brought out, the leaked version.
Well, not all of them right away, right? Some of them hang on.
No, all of them are going in the first year. Some of them are retroactive for 17. There's a work component for able-bodied adults in the Medicaid expansion population, which is a good thing. Okay. We have this high-risk pool that came from two of our colleagues in the Freedom Caucus, Mr. Schweikert and Mr. Palmer, which is that safety net provision we think is important. And then most importantly, the waiver provision is what we really fought hard for, which says if we're not going to repeal all the regulations that drive up premiums, at least let's give states the option for a waiver out of those key regulations. So,
the fact that one of the ways to win over some of your reluctant colleagues with this pre-existing condition rider, whatever you guys call it, it's going to be over 5 years. Are you worried that they've stuffed this thing with a lot of extra funds and fees, that the savings over what was the existing Affordable Care Act might not be as substantial as people think?
I mean, that's the case. We understand that. But our main focus is a full repeal. We got some more work to do to get there, and bringing down premiums for American middle-class families. We think if the waiver is sought and received by states, that will in fact happen for those individuals. Then if we can get this interstate shopping, this across state lines purchasing of insurance, then we're going to see even more of that take place and really begin to bring down premiums, as your previous guest was talking about, which have went up so high for most families over the last several years. So we think this is, again, a good, solid step towards doing what the voters sent us here to do, what we told them we were going to do, but we got some more work to accomplish in the Senate.
Has the president talked to you, Congressman, to try to win you over, like say, hey, Jim, I really need you on this one. It's not perfect, but the alternative is awful?
Sure. And we talked early on several times, at the White House several times, on the phone. The White House has been great. We've talked to Dr. Price, Mr. Mulvaney. We've talked to the Vice President I don't know how many times. They've been great at reaching out and trying to get this thing across the finish line.
Do you know the number when it comes up on the phone? Does it say President Trump and you get, I'm not home, I'm not, you know, what do you do?
It says no caller ID is what it says, Neil.
All right, so you obviously felt the pressure. I kid, but to make the point, the president was much more engaged, we're told, in this second incarnation than the first.
No,
is that
wouldn't
true?
call it. Well, yeah, he was engaged, but I wouldn't call it pressure. I mean, there's the pressure. The real pressure is let's do what we told the American people we're going to do. It's not about what people say up here.
He had a White House event the other day. I mean, he's telling the congressmen and women in attendance, I think it's a very good idea. You go ahead and vote for this thing, right?
I get all that, but my job is to do what I told the voters I was going to do. To me, the so-called Washington inside pressure.
Right.
Who cares? It's about what the American people sent us here to do. I think we're taking a big step in that direction, and that's why we're supporting it today. The vast majority of the Freedom Caucus is going to be supporting this legislation here in just a few minutes.
All right. You said the vast majority. There are going to be some holdouts. The ones who are holding out, is it because of the added costs?
No, I think it's because it's not quite fully a complete repeal of Obamacare. And I think it's only going to be 2 of our 30-some members. So the vast majority, when I say vast majority, I mean the vast majority of the Freedom Caucus are going to vote yes. All
right. Now, I was talking to one of your colleagues who said something to the effect, later this year, I was trying to push him into a time frame, but it sounded like late summer, early fall. That's my impression, so I could be wrong, before this is done. And that might be optimistic. And then you get to the tax cuts. Is that order right, that time frame right?
Well, it may take the Senate a while to do, but the Senate's time frame is up to them, not up to the House, of course.
Right.
But we can start working on the budget and then into the tax legislation, tax reform legislation. We can start that right away, which we plan to do, I think, here in the House. And that's a good thing, because you get rid of Obamacare, you relieve this regulatory burden that's been on American business, and then you do tax reform. You're creating that environment that's conducive to growth.
But you still need the whole health care thing, Congressman, done, signed, sealed, and delivered by the president before
Before we can do tax reform, but we can start working on it in the House. As long as it's out of the House and on the Senate, we can begin to work on it here, which we're going to do.
Okay, so when it comes to the tax stuff, are you a fan of whatever cuts are finally agreed to being retroactive to the beginning of this year? Or would you just be happy if they just take effect at the time they're approved?
I'm for the best deal we can get, letting families keep more of their money and designing a tax code that's conducive to growth.
No, I understand that, but would you also be a fan of making them retroactive?
Sure, but I'm not locked into this revenue neutral idea. I mean, this whole idea of revenue neutral, that's a fancy way of saying that the tax burden is going to stay the same. We're just going to shift around who pays what. And in that environment, typically what happens is the connected class in D.C. gets a good deal and middle class families get a bad deal. So let's just design a code that lets families keep more of their money and one that's going to create an environment that's going to produce economic growth. That should be first and foremost our objective.
All right. Well, some of your colleagues are very big on this, paying for this stuff right up top, including in the Senate where there isn't much wiggle room, right? You got a couple of votes there. Are you worried that the tax cut thing ironically ends up being a harder lift than the health care thing?
We'll see, but since when did Republicans say that letting people keep more of their money had to, cost the government? Since when do we lock ourselves into this revenue-neutral straitjacket? I just don't buy that. We should do the right kind of tax policy, and then let's cut spending. That's what conservatives are supposed to be about. That's what the Freedom Caucus is about. So let's do it that way.
Jim Jordan, there's never any doubt where you're coming from. I've always admired that. Good seeing you again.
Thank you, Neil. Take care.